This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. All right, guys, we've got a special guest on the podcast today. His name is Ricky Schroder. So he is an actor and filmmaker. He's also the founder and president of Real American Heroes Foundation. That's a nonprofit organization that exists to provide content that celebrates America's true heroes. We didn't actually end up getting to talk about that today because we talked about a lot of other stuff. But he actually began his acting career at the age of 9. He was in the movie The Champ with Jon Voight, and he earned a Golden Globe at the age of 9 years old. And that really kicked off a multifaceted career for him as an actor, a producer, writer, and also a director. He was in Silver Spoons, Lonesome Dove, Scrubs, 24, and then he actually transitioned into directing. And he directed the music video for Whiskey Lullaby by Brad Paisley and Alison Krauss. And so to any of you that are the Forging Table fans, you know that I think that Alison Krauss is the best female vocalist of all time, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today. But in this interview, it really didn't go any way like how I thought it did, but I still thought it was going to go, and it still went really, really well. Because at the beginning, I asked him about, what was it like getting into acting and, getting in so young and being so successful, so young, and all those different things. And then right there from the beginning, he's like, yeah, I was planted in Hollywood as a child, and I was going through basically a government-run program that planted people in certain places, specifically in Hollywood and other places inside of entertainment. And then it's just like, what? Wait, what? And so I just started asking a bunch of questions about that. Like, what do you mean you were planted? And he said he was raised and, planted with more like conservative truths and Americana truths and biblical truths and things like that. And so we really, really dug into that. That was an incredibly unique thing for us to talk about specifically on this show. But then we talked about how he became a Christian, and now that he's a conservative Christian and an outspoken conservative Christian in Hollywood, like how's he able to even pull that off and still have a career? Then we talked specifically about pornography and the pornography industry, what he's doing to try to get the pornography industry, specifically the URLs from the .coms to the XXXs, because of what it's doing, to children, but also to other people across society, the things that we can work on there. And we really went into a lot of subject matters in terms of this country and what does November look like and what happens if Biden's elected versus Trump. And man, we really weaved in and out on this particular thing. But at the end, we had a couple of fun questions like, hey, what's your favorite Western? If you had to delete all the other Westerns, what's the one that you would stick around with? And so we got to kick that around a little bit. But guys, I really, really enjoyed my time with him. Buckle up. Without further ado, let's get into it. Ricky Schroder, welcome to Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. And I just got to tell you, I'm jealous of your background there. Where are you at? What are you doing?
Well, I'm here at my fiance's house in Atlanta, Georgia, helping take care of my future mother-in-law. Just had some surgery. I just got back from Ecuador, went and visited my daughter down in South America. I had a great visit for a week there. And as soon as we're done here, I'm heading home to Colorado. We got a farm we got to get water on and got grass to grow for the
Very
for the
good.
cows.
What part of Colorado?
Grand Junction, Colorado, Western Colorado.
Okay. Yeah, very, very good. I spent quite a bit of time out there hunting, and I got a bunch of buddies that go out there hunting basically every year. But we were talking about a lot of cool stuff off air, but we probably need to just cover like the boring stuff, like your career and what you're known for and, how you made your name and all that. So let's start there, and then we'll back into some cooler stuff. And so I say that somewhat tongue in cheek. We do need to talk about something that's fairly unique about you, Ricky, and it's that you started a very unique career at a very unique age. So you became an actor at the age of 9 years old. And then the cool thing about that is you didn't just become an actor and do, like cereal commercials. You were in a major motion picture with Jon Voight called The Champ, and you actually won a Golden Globe for that. And so a lot's been made about you being the youngest Golden Globe winner. And so, I guess in a nutshell, give us whatever details you want, but how in the world does a 9-year-old get into the acting biz? And then how in the world could you be so good out of the gate to where you actually get an award for your trouble?
Well, that's a great question. So let me go back to the beginning. I started training to be in front of the camera when I was about 5 years old. I'm from New York, and my dad worked there at IBM, and he said that he had some other coworkers at IBM that their kids were getting into modeling and commercial work. And so I got an agent, my first agent, when I was 5, and I got booked all the time. I would go from Staten Island, New York into the city and do photo shoots for the catalogs like Sears and JCPenney's and Toys R Us. And so I did, hundreds and hundreds of kind of print modeling work when I was 5, 6 years old, and commercials. I did dozens of commercials. And then when I was 7, they brought me a movie called Jaws 2. And I was cast as Roy Scheider's son. And it was a really bad script. It's the one where the shark bites the cable and gets electrocuted.
Right.
Well, halfway through production of Jaws 2, they fired the director and they rewrote the script and recast the movie. And so I went out with the old cast. So then they gave me another movie when I was 7 called The Champ. And I went and made that movie in California and Florida with John Voight when I was 7 years old. But there was 2 years before that where I was sort of really trained. I remember my parents told me in 1 year when I was 5, I had 200 jobs in 1 year. So I would have, that's a lot of training for a 5-year-old boy. They want to teach you how to stand on the mark,
right?
How
to
walk how to follow directions, how to say what they want, how to smile or be sad when they want you to. So there was a lot of sort of programming early about how to accomplish the goals that they had for me. And then when I was 7, like I said, The Champ came, and then my whole life changed. My whole family's life changed. Everything changed.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, Ricky. I appreciate you giving that level of detail. Another thing that we hear that's kind of a common refrain is that there are child actors and child stars that then their lives just completely fall apart. It's like they don't have careers as adults because they were famous so early. And we've seen so many examples of that. And then you even get into people that were maybe popular on Disney Channel, and then later in life, it's just they can't even function, right? They can't have kids, they can't have businesses, nothing like that. And so for you, I guess what kind of helped keep you on a pathway to where you were still able to create a career and maintain a career as an adult?
Well, I was on a mission, you see. I was placed on a mission, and I'm just fulfilling that mission today. So all of that stuff was sort of, it's definitely a mission that I was put on. I don't know how to explain it, except I'll just tell you about it. But it was a counter-programming mission. So Ronald Reagan had a program he saw how the media was so influential over the masses, and they decided to have counter-programming assets. And so they were developing assets, people that they would place into Hollywood. And then, one day they could reignite them if they needed them, I guess, or spark them. And so I was sort of a seed planted in Hollywood. And then in November 2020, they brought me Hunter Biden's laptop, this man. And, I'd only met him one time before, 10 years earlier. I'd met him in a random encounter. And then he came to my house 10 years later with Hunter Biden's laptop. And so when that happened, I started getting sort of memories triggered about the program that I was involved with, and that there was other kids involved with. And it was some sort of program based around tennis at a place called St. Joseph's by the Sea in Staten Island, New York. And so, the program was tennis academy, where they were grooming us to play tennis, but they would then take us into classrooms one at a time with headphones and do other things with us. So I would sit across from an instructor as a child every Saturday. From 9 to 12, I would go play tennis. I grew up on the courts. But there was a time during that where I would be taken alone into a classroom. And, I'm not quite sure what they were programming us with, but I believe it was counter-programming, because I got to meet Reagan several times with my father. I'm not sure why. So that's hence why I believe it was his program. And so there's more that meets the eye to this Hollywood stuff. Some of it is just people out there with amazing talent that are making it. Others are placed there and built and made. And so I was one of the made assets.
So Ricky, as you're describing that, I remember hearing people talk about different plants that are in Hollywood or that are in music or in things like that, but they're coming from these weird accounts on Twitter or on Instagram, and it's always got this dramatic music in the background. And so it seems too fanciful and a little bit like, it's immediately you kind of, even in your brain, recategorize it as kind of conspiracy theory stuff. But tell me a little bit more about that. So you're thinking that there's like a government agency of some kind?
My mother told me that there were other kids in the program. The last words she got to speak to me before I can't speak with her anymore, was that tell Ricky that there was other kids in the program. It wasn't just him. And so I remember some other kids that were in this program. And so I'm not sure what the program was. I think it was, like I said, it was designed to place assets in Hollywood. And I was just a seed. There was many seeds I think they planted as well. Some of them with the conservative programming agenda, some of them with the liberal mindset, most with the liberal mindset agenda. And so, the CIA, they use the media to manipulate the masses. We are simple primate. Okay. The bottom line is we haven't been designed, our minds, to have this much stimulation, this much input. When electricity came, the advancements in humankind were enormous, very fast and rapid. And this tool, the radio especially too, and music, is a powerful tool for programming and socially engineering the masses. So the CIA, of course, has a hand in that. And so they want to have an influence there. And so I believe.
And so with that, go ahead.
I believe that is what I was involved with unknowingly for a long time. But when they brought Hunter Biden's laptop to me, it triggered these memories, and they were validated by one other person who also was in that room.
Okay,
my sister was in that room.
Was your sister part of the program?
I think they kicked her out, but they tried her out.
And so did anybody of the other kids that you remember from the program, do you remember them going into any type of entertainment or media or any of those types of entities?
I don't know. They kept us pretty separate, but I saw them coming and going. Okay.
And so with that in mind, help me understand a little bit more about, okay, so do you even know why they bring you Hunter Biden's laptop? Because I don't know if you know this, Ricky, but I have it on good authority. And a bunch of guys that used to be in the CIA, they told me that was Russian disinformation until it wasn't, until it was like obviously true that was something that they were trying to hide to make sure that Biden could win in 2020. But why you? Why then? Why did they bring this material?
Yeah, those are all the same questions I had. But okay, when they brought it, when he brought it to me, I started having memories about this man and I in a white room, and I had headphones on, and there was a tape recorder in front of us, and it was somebody my father played tennis with. And my sister remembered his name. His name was John Tolve, Tolve. And he's dead, but he was a NYPD detective for 35 years as his day job. But he was one of the men that I remember involved in the program. But my parents claim they have no idea why he would have done that, why he would have put headphones on us in a room privately. So I feel like there's some secrets that mom and dad just can't talk about. And I understand that. And they're probably scared of whoever they need to be, but they don't need to be afraid. And if they do have any information, I wish they would just come forth and let us know what this program was and not be afraid of them. But I feel like that's what's happened, is mom and dad have been intimidated not to tell me about what they did with me.
So Ricky, is this a program that you think is still in place?
I don't imagine that it ever stopped. I just imagine it got much more advanced. I'm an old model.
Okay. And so how do you think that translated for you specifically? Because you could kind of see, okay, you get this big role with a big actor at the time, Jon Voight, and you get this Golden Globe and all those different things.
They gave me the role. They gave me the role.
Yeah, they gave you the role. But then how do you feel like this program may have translated into your career thereafter and even on into today?
Well, they gave me roles like Medal of Honor recipient Major Whittlesey, a World War I major that I played in the Lost Battalion. So they just hand me that role. They gave me a role. I played Calvin Graham, a 12-year-old a veteran of World War II who was hurt in the Navy. He was on a destroyer. So they gave me certain roles, because it fit the template, which I was designed to help push. So they gave me roles throughout my career that were kind of Americana roles, cowboy roles, Lonesome Dove. They gave me those opportunities because that's what I was built to push, is that kind of messaging.
Okay, let me actually go back to something, and you may have already elucidated it as much as you can. But you said whenever you got the Joe Biden laptop, or the Hunter Biden laptop that was put in front of you, that it triggered some memories. Have you had any other experiences, Ricky, throughout your life where, and we know how memories work, it can be a song, it can be a taste or a smell or something that hits your senses that triggers something from a time, past, or maybe it's even something in a dream. Have you had any other things that have happened, like what happened whenever they brought you the laptop?
No, that was the first time I had the memories of the childhood programming, was when I got that in November of 2020, when he brought me the laptop. It's the first time I remembered any of this. And then it was, like I said, validated by one other person who was in that room, my sister.
And so I guess, how curious are you, Ricky, to really get to the bottom of this? Because I'm sure there are things that you could potentially do to try to uncover more of this, to maybe even trigger more memories. Or is this just something that, hey, it happened, I'm curious, but I'm not going to like.
No. It's the biggest question of my life inside is what was this program, and how it did it, who else was involved, and how did it impact me? But I don't feel like it was because it was counter programming, the messaging and the programming. I believe that there was also biblical programming. There was, the forefathers, like as a child, like the bedspread on my bed was the George Washington crossing the river, the Revolutionary War. My room was decorated like Revolutionary War motif. If you go to the St. Joseph's by the Sea High School website today and look at their rec room, you'll see all the founding fathers' Revolutionary War art in their student room. It was the same stuff on my walls as a child growing up. So whatever programming they were giving me was based in constitutional principles. So I wasn't being given some sort of Marxist ideology. I was being given the founding fathers' principles that made this country great. And so the programming was centered around that.
So, Ricky, let's actually dig a little bit more into that, because one of the things I was obviously going to ask you about was being an outspoken, if you can call it that, conservative Republican in Hollywood, because you can essentially count those on your two hands, the numbers of people that that would even come out and say that they were voting for a Republican candidate. Do you feel like that you were compelled to believe in more conservative, at least tangentially Judeo-Christian values, as opposed to the leftist Marxist thing? Because it seems like most of Hollywood defaults to leftism, Marxism, socialism, communism. Do you feel like that's a virtue of how you actually feel, or what you were programmed to think as a child?
Well, you can train a child to be anything you want them to be. You can make a boy think he's a girl think they're a boy.
Right.
So no, we're all a product of our programming and conditioning. And so that includes our home environment, things we watch through this magic device, the stranger, the things we listen to, the people around us. We're all conditioned. And so no, I believe that I'm a product of the conditioning that I was exposed to, whether that be in my personal family, or in this program.
Okay, so let's talk about where you're at right now in 2024. When you think that way, because, okay, I've grown up in Oklahoma. And so in Oklahoma, everyone's like at least Christian adjacent or Republican adjacent, because why? Maybe grandpa, went to church, and maybe our parents listen to country music. And so, we kind of fall into those categories very easily. But I know a lot of people that have rejected their programming or their values that came from their family of origin. And now as adults, they're way more left leaning. They actually believe a little girl can become a little boy and all these different things. As you sit here today, Ricky, do you, in your heart of hearts, believe in capital C conservatism and the ideas therein?
I believe it's closest to what Jesus would want, as far as Jesus, I got saved, right? Because
Amen.
I had to turn my life over to Jesus because I was in a bad way and I couldn't find my way out. And the only way out was Jesus. Like just literally giving all my fear and my shame and my anguish and anxiety and suffering and all the things I was feeling as a human, I had to give away before I could like find some peace. And, so what was your question again?
Well, I was just basically asking about, because some people they have stuff, they have values shoved down their throat as a child.
Right.
And then they grow up to reject those values, maybe because they were shoved down their throat, or maybe because they actually don't really truly believe in it. And so I was asking, essentially, do you believe in those capital C conservative values, or do you feel like it's just a downstream consequence of your childhood?
Goodness. I mean, I think everybody has to get saved. Every person, wherever you grow up, in whatever family you have to grow up, whatever experience you have, it's up to each of us to get to know Jesus or not, or to reject him or to accept him. And it doesn't matter, you're where you come from. It's an individual battle, and the battle's in the mind, the battle's in the heart. And so, I resisted Jesus. I resisted spirituality for a long time, but I always knew it was there, and it is there, brother. I'm telling you, our souls are eternal. Okay. There's no doubt in my mind, our souls will go on to our home when we're done with this place. Everything on earth has to die. Right. And so that by definition means our soul is alien to earth. We are not from here. We come from somewhere else and we return somewhere else. And so, I find great comfort in knowing that this is a temporary world. This is a real world, and it can hurt and stuff, but it's just temporary. And I just wish, I found that peace earlier in my life. I'm 54 years old, and I had a lot of struggles before I found the forgiveness that Christ offered me. And so it was literally just being humble enough to hit my knees and say, I'm a sinner, and I give it to you, and I don't want to sin anymore. And then asking for that relationship. And so I'm just fulfilling the mission that I was put on as a child. And so my mission was to kind of go into Hollywood. My father's mission was to put me into Hollywood. As a kid growing up, he'd say to me, one day, Ricky, you're going to talk about what happened to you in Hollywood. And I just want you to be fair. Be fair to your mother and I. And so anyways, that was the mission. The mission was to go in there, see it, live it, experience it, come out and talk about it. I'm just fulfilling the mission.
Well, Ricky, I want to dig in a little bit more to the road that brought you to Christ, because it's a varied road. There's not like a single story for how people come to Christ. And so for you kind of alluded to that you had maybe come to the end of your rope a little bit, that you had tried other things and had other options, but that you found yourself to the cross of Christ. How'd you end up there?
Well, I always knew there was a spirit world. So as a child, I always knew. And I needed it as a child. I wasn't taught about Christ. My mother taught me to pray, but it wasn't in Jesus' name or anything. It was just praying to God. Well, I knew I was in trouble in Hollywood when I was a kid. I've told other people this story. I'll tell you. So I went over Charlie Sheen's house when I was about 13 years old, and my publicist was the same as his. And somebody, I'm not sure, but there was a bunch of guys around. He had lots of friends over. Popped a VHS tape in the player, and there was a man on a slab and a cult around him with hoods, and they were chanting, and they took a knife and they cut him open down the side, and they drained his blood into a big bowl and took his organs out. And then they took the blood on the video, and then the girls took their clothes off on the video, and they had an orgy in this man's blood, this dead man's blood. And I'm about 13 years old. I couldn't drive. And so they gave me the cassette to take home. And I remember that night, my dad and I said, Dad, you have to watch this. So we went into his closet where he had a VHS player, and we put it in there and we watched it. And he's like, give it back to whoever gave it to you and don't ever watch it again. And so I did that. But he knew who gave it to me because he knew who drove me there. He was driving me around, this guy, Jeff Ballard. And so he knew who gave it to me. He knew where it came from. But anyway, we didn't do anything with the authorities. You know, he never called the authorities. And so I realized then when I was like 13 that I might be around people that are dangerous, you know. And so, can you hear that rain?
Yeah, I can hear that rain. It's fine. I think everybody will enjoy the sounds of nature. Yeah, you keep going with your story.
Yeah, so I knew I was around dangerous people after that video. And so I leaned a lot on my Father in heaven, my spiritual protector, my angels, like as a child, because I was around dangerous people and I couldn't necessarily, you know, count on my parents to protect me.
And so, Ricky, with what you're doing now, I guess we could even back into a discussion about the Council on Pornography Reform that you're doing. And, you know, it seems like you're doing things now that you're trying to protect children from extreme imagery, specifically that of violent imagery and violent pornographic imagery. Do you feel like that? It seems like there's a direct correlation between what you experience and what you're trying to work against now, no?
Absolutely. You know, that was super stimuli for me. That's when the mind sees or experiences something that you'll never forget. And so, but yeah, I mean, I was exposed to pornography. I was 9 years old the first time. And, you know, those are images that you don't forget, and they're dangerous to the young forming mind. You know, male primates like us, we were never designed to watch each other have intercourse. We were never designed to watch each other have sex. So when you look at the pornography industry, it's kind of like I think there's many agendas, but one of them is a homosexual agenda. Because as a young male, while you sit and watch pornography, you know, at first you look at the girl only, but then, you know, you start to develop perhaps an opinion about what the male in the video looks like. And it was never sort of natural for us to watch each other have sex and nor develop opinions about what each other look like having sex. And so I think there's a homosexual kind of mindset that develops in some males because they see what they like or they want to become, and they sort of then get this idol, you know, they want to become like that guy or that guy. And I think that's sort of the beginning seeds of a homosexual agenda. And so, yeah, so I was around a lot of homosexuals my whole life. And, you know, I've seen most of them were just absolutely fine to me, but some of them are predators. Some of them actually they hunt, you know, young souls, and they look for opportunities to destroy lives. And so anyway, I've seen a lot of that kind of stuff as a child. And I think that the single best thing I can do to fight and help this culture that seems like it's going down the drain is to tackle pornography. And so the biggest thing we want is move pornography back in the XXX URL. And if it's in the XXX URL and get it out of .com, it can be more easily managed and controlled so that the young people who are just getting their arousal templates established, you know, as young people, we're just learning what our bodies are doing and what sex is and what these feelings are. And so we don't want porn producers developing our sexual desires and appetites and creating, you know, our lives. And that's what I think happens a lot as young men is when they watch porn, and sex is such a big part of the human experience that we sort of start identifying as what we see on the programming. So anyway, we want porn we want porn back in the XXX URL. And the other thing we want is an on-off switch. So we want the Jesus bubble, I call it. And that is a bubble around your house, a bubble around your family, a bubble around your mind, if you so choose. And that means that they can't push this filth into your phone, into your house, or into your mind unless you allow it. Right now, they're delivering that stuff every day to your phone like a drug dealer delivers. If a drug dealer delivered drugs to your front door every day and you had a habit and you had to choose whether or not to open the door to go out and buy groceries, but you had to step over the drugs, you'd fail. Every one of us would fail if there was that drug of choice there and you were an addict. Okay? Pornography is an addiction. They push it to your phone, they push it to your house, and they never had the rights to do it using the First Amendment. The First Amendment was freedom of speech, political speech. Speak against your government if you want to resist them and fight them. But they defined it in the 1950s, I think it was, or 70s, as freedom of expression. And freedom of expression included photographs and videos now. But the First Amendment was written before electricity, before a camera. And so it's been perverted. This was never free speech, perversion. This is against English common law. The 13 colonies were founded on English common law. If you walked down the street and did something inappropriate, that was against English common law. We as a nation are going to get back to English common law. It's a matter of time. We're going to get back to a civil society, and in my opinion, it's what is coming, but it's going to be a process getting there.
Hey guys, real quick. If you're anything like me, you are constantly on the lookout for high quality products that are actually made here in America by American hands. The problem is that a lot of American companies have outsourced their labor overseas, so it's an American company, but it's supporting people that don't live here. So I've always wanted to partner with an American company that prioritizes America, American workers, and making all of their materials here in this country. That's why I want to remind you that we are partnered with Origin. Origin is an apparel company based in Maine, and they are focused on getting as much manufacturing back to the United States as they can possibly do. What do they make? They make the best jiu-jitsu gis on the planet, and these are the only jiu-jitsu gis that are made completely in America. They also make jeans. Yes, they're stretchy and awesome. They also make amazing hunting gear, and I know you guys love your Kuiu and your Sitka, but those companies use overseas labor, and they don't do that to help you guys out. They do that to increase their profit margins. Origin also makes boots and work boots, and yes, that does include steel-toe boots. And in the fall of last year, they launched a line of everyday clothing. Their Versa pants are their everyday pants, and they are just especially phenomenal. They also make other outdoor clothes and workout clothes, and they're launching new apparel stuff all the time. If you haven't already, you need to check them out and support a company that supports America and America's workers. Try Origin out today by going to www.originusa.com. That's originusa.com. Use the promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. Again, that's originusa.com. Promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. Well, Ricky, let's talk about the process of how you would even go about getting porn back on the XXX URL, because I've said before, like I really can't understand why pornography is legal. Again, I don't think it really goes into the First Amendment and the freedom of expression because of the deleterious effects it could have specifically on children, because it teaches them and gives them scripts of how they are to act. So a boy thinks that unless he's violently penetrating the anus of a woman, then he can't please her. And then a girl sees the woman responding to that stimuli in a way that would seem like she's pleased by this encounter. And then she thinks, if I'm not being violently penetrated in the anus and enjoying it, then something's wrong with me. So how do we go about actually tangibly doing that? Because, you know, I'm fine to scream at the sky for a little bit, but what are the ways we can actually turn this ship around?
Well, Congressman Westerman, we had a meeting with him a few weeks ago, and we just had another follow-up meeting yesterday. And so there's something called the Legislative Counsel Office, and each congressperson gets resources to develop bills. Well, yesterday we got the great news that Congressman Westerman and another congressman he's working with are going to put resources towards getting this bill written. And I mean now, we're starting the process today of getting this bill written. There's an international organization called ICANN. ICANN is the governing, if you go on to our councilonpornreform.org website, you'll see information there, white papers that we have produced, products that we've put out. Well, ICANN is an international organization that determines the URLs you get to use around the world. So it's a globalist Marxist agenda. We don't even control the URL pipelines. So even though right now .xxx URL exists, there's only one pornography site on the .xxx URL. And so we're going to work with Congressman Westerman and the other congressmen, I forget, I haven't been introduced yet, to get a bill written. And it's going to be simple and straightforward. And that is all adult content goes in the XXX URL, and the .com is a retail platform. Once that happens, I hope there's a company like the next step 2, is giving Americans the Jesus bubble and the choice to turn off pornography to our homes and our phones and our minds. And so there's 2 ways you can do that. You can get a second bill demanding the telecommunications industry and company give us the choice for the Jesus on-off switch, or you use private enterprise and we go like to Patriot Mobile or Mint Mobile or one of these companies, and they develop the on-off switch for their consumers, for their people that use their services. And then you'll see millions of people flood to that technology. And then the marketplace will have to compete, and AT&T and Verizon will have to create this adult content off switch as well. But the first step is getting it in one single pipeline. And that's the XXX URL. And then the second step is creating the switch. And some people will say to me, well, the technology's not there yet. Well, then we'll design the technology. You should never have released this filth into our world without being able to control it and let little kids be damaged by it. And they need held accountable, the people involved, for allowing this. I think there should be class action lawsuits like tobacco. Get some law firms going, get all these victims of pornography since they're 9 years old signed up, and go after the distributors of it, not the producers of it. The big companies, AT&T and Verizon, go after them and get settlements and get the counseling you need, get the help you need. Let them pay for it.
Ricky, I think you're absolutely right, because we never hear porn talked about in the way that you're talking about it now, but we'll hear that about fentanyl. You know, we'll be up in arms about China sending, you know, the parts to make the fentanyl, and then the cartels in Mexico putting it together and then getting it across the border and getting it into the bodies of Americans. And it's like, hey, well, yeah, we're mad at the drug dealers. We're mad at the people that are dealing death, but we're even more mad at the people that are producing the death on the front end, the top of the funnel people, not the people that are there at the bottom. So we're criminalize the people that are buying it and using it, which again, we should have criminalized drugs. I'm all for that, but we don't ever talk about pornography in that way, because there's so much money. There's so much money in it, Ricky. And the thing is like, we wouldn't do this and we wouldn't turn a blind eye to this in any other form or fashion. And it's even true in the church, Ricky. I get asked all the time, hey, why don't pastors talking about porn more often? I'm like, probably because they're using it. They're probably using the porn and jerking off like that. That's why they don't want to talk about it, because they want to pick your varsity sin or some other person's varsity sin to talk about, as opposed to one that's, you know, related to them entirely. So I think part of it, Ricky, is just talking about it in the way that we're talking about it now.
Yeah, we're making a documentary we're excited about called Erotic Erosion. And we're looking at the decline of our standards, values, where we're at. How did this happen since internet pornography came? And so we're talking to all sorts of interesting people like Dr. Amen from the Brain Clinic, who's an expert on arousal. Mm-hmm. And basically what's going on is that oxytocin, the love hormone, serotonin, dopamines, when you masturbate, is dumped into the brain. And it's an addiction. It's a very powerful force. And it makes the young male or female want to go back for more. And so we're bonding with electronics. And I like to say this about women. They bond with vibrators. You know, if you're getting an oxytocin dump from a vibrator as a lady, or serotonin release, that's what's giving you the pleasure. It's that 110 power. It's not necessarily the person you're with or the intimacy and so I think that's kind of like pornography for women, is these vibrators. And so, you know, we're a simple primate. And so when these hormones get released into our brains, you know, it's powerful and it conditions us and it becomes habit forming. And, you know, so in Colorado, just so you know, we just went with Custer County, Colorado a few months ago, and they passed a resolution making it illegal for pornography to be in any way provided for a person under 18 years old. And there's going to be a state law now based on this county is going to be like a dry county for 18-year-olds. So no alcohol, no pornography and so what we're trying to do is build the county movement and take it to the county level. Because if the counties pass this resolution, and the county commissioners have a lot of authority, it's the lowest form of government. So any county anywhere in the United States can vote on this and pass a similar resolution that Custer County passed, which is making the county a dry county for under 18 for pornography with stiff penalties that are going to come. So there's being a state law written now that there's jail time involved. And so that is going to force behavior, culture change. And that's what we need real actions that force conditioning on the masses.
So, Ricky, let's actually talk about that a little bit more, about how we change the way people view it, because it's one thing to have laws against something. We have laws against a lot of things that people still do. We also have, there are schools that have phone-free schools, and it's like magic. Kids still find a way to have their phone in school and to, text people throughout the day and do all these different things. Yeah. And so it's one thing to regulate against something, to build laws against something, to build punishments into a system. The law is a teacher. And so, Roe v. Wade, when that was enforced, people based their morality on, well, it's legal, so I should be able to do it, right? But what else outside of that, in kind of the capital immorality world, can we do as parents, as Christians, as Christ followers, to help lead our children and ourselves away from something like this that is just so dark and satanic?
Well, we have to make it socially unacceptable, and we have to make the people that engage in the furry community. The furries are based in bestiality. They're not cute little mascots running around, I did some investigation into the furries, and it's a kind of perverted group. But grandma and grandpa are all laughing at, oh, isn't that cute? So we got to educate grandma and grandpa that this is based in Satanism and bestiality and sex with animals. This is not some sort of like cute, harmless little furry con. There's something much deeper and darker behind it. So we got to talk the truth. We got to speak the truth about it. They may not all be aware of those furries, what's going on, but many of them are. So I guess you socially stigmatize those who engage in perverse behavior. And it's not pleasant to do. It's not a fun thing to do, to challenge people's behaviors. But you do, the last thing I want to talk about is Pride Month. You know what I mean? It's like, but I'll talk about it because they're pushing a homosexual agenda against the biblical principles. And, if you don't speak up against it, then I guess you're complacent to it. You just want to go along with it, and that's what we need as a culture, is to be able to speak our minds, honestly, but kindly. I can be pretty brutal sometimes, and I have to learn to be softer too, but we still got to speak the truth. We can't shut up. We can't be quiet. We have to speak the truth.
Ricky, let me actually ask you, because you and I are on the same page. We can have a tendency to be a little bit too harsh, to go a little bit too hard. No, anyone that's listened to the show for long enough kind of knows that to be true. But let me ask you, I do feel like there is a role for righteous ridicule in a situation like this. So let's take something that has become, anathema to polite society, and that's smoking cigarettes. And so used to, even when I was in college, we would have to walk through, when I was going to the liberal arts building, I had to walk through these enormous plumes of smoke because there were dozens of people outside smoking a cigarette before they went into class. Then it became a smoke-free campus. And then just the idea of somebody walking across campus smoking a cigarette is just like gross. It's like, wait, you smoke cigarettes? Not only are you going to die, but you smell and you look terrible. What's wrong with you? So there's a little bit of ridicule that's positive. Like if a buddy of yours gains 40 pounds, I think it is perfectly appropriate to ridicule him in a loving way and say, look, brother, you're killing yourself. You're going to lead to your all-cause mortality has gone up with every pound that you've added. Yeah. This is a problem. Like, let's get you a rucksack. like, let's get you a gym membership. Let's get you some new shoes. Like, let's start, peeling that weight off a little bit. I feel like there should be healthy, righteous, but directed and pointed ridicule at the people that are producing this content, spreading this content, and certainly the people we've already talked about that are at the top of the funnel. I mean, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes I just go up to strange guys. I'll just meet people and be, how much porn did you watch today? And these kids look at me, these young men, like, but just to start the dialogue, no, you shouldn't be watching porn today. Like, I'll just say that to a teenager, and they'll be like, and maybe that's a little weird, but to normalize the discussion that everybody's seen porn. Okay. So let's just get that on the table. So we all don't have to be like hiding, in the shadows about it, and table it on the discussion. Let's put it on the table so we can discuss it. Because when you expose it, you talk about it, it seems like it gets better and you can heal it. But there's so much shame around the topic. So I think, being able to speak about it is important. But it's a filth. So it's a filth. There's no doubt about it. And it's, 7 out of 10 child abuse victims know their abusers, Kyle. So stranger danger is not the biggest problem. It's almost 8 out of 2 know their abusers. So, a lot of people get fired up about the stranger danger element, and that's big.
Sure.
But almost 8 out of 10 victims of child sexual abuse know their abusers. And I believe that that's a different, that this pornography is sort of feeding that kind of abuse in the home and abuse from friends and family.
100%. 100%. There's a buddy of mine that wrote a book years ago called How Pornography Harms. His name's Dr. John Fobert. And he went into the brain science of what is happening when somebody is experiencing pornography, when they're masturbating, using pornography, the way their mind will think about it. And you said it. My first images of pornography are burned into my brain, Ricky. I can't forget them. Yeah, like even if I wanted to, perhaps God will give me grace and get those out of my brain at some point. But I can remember those first Playboys I saw, or those first images. I remember the first video I saw of pornography where I saw sex happen for the first time. I remember all of that.
Me too.
And like the entire circumstance, and it becomes this overwhelming thing. But one thing that John Fobert talked about in his book, because he interviewed guys that were like pedophiles that were in the community for a long time and then got busted with child porn or were doing pedophilia themselves, almost to a person. All these people had used porn as a masturbatory aid. Most of them used it innocently, if you could call it that, by Playboys, and then it was Penthouse, and then it was Hustler, and then it was videos, and then it was smut films, then it was rape porn, then it was murder porn, like all these different types of things. And with a lot of these people, as we've all known at this point, you're initially just, masturbating, looking at two normal people having what you would call normal sex. Then that doesn't become exciting anymore.
Escalates.
Then you need hardcore. Then you need BDSM. Then you need rape porn. Then you need, I need this girl to look a little younger. Okay, well, she's 18, but she's got pigtails. I kind of like that. And then you end up getting to this point at the end of the rainbow where these guys end up actually saying, okay, I can't even get it up behind my laptop anymore. I have to go try this in real life. And so, yes, I think you're right in line with that. Whenever children are abused, whenever women are abused, and it's abused by people that they know,
and boys,
we've got to know, and boys, absolutely, and boys, like these images and these videos that are going to these people's brains, they are teaching them what they should act out in real life. It's one of Satan's most effective tactics that he's used against not just Westerners, but people all across the globe.
Yes, I believe it's a huge Satan tool, and it's also part of the globalist Marxist agenda because they control the URLs. ICANN, the international group that controls that whole world. So we're working on getting a law passed where we're going to push it back in the XXX URL, man. And once it's there, it's as simple as at your home. You just have whatever your internet service provider is. You can block anything from the XXX URL. So it's really simple. The second piece is the on-off switch for our cell phones. So the home is easy to fix because it's all going to be but the cell phone is going to be a little trickier and it's going to be a little more of a fight because they make billions of dollars in data. And so, but we want the choice. We demand the choice. as Americans. They had no right to unleash this into our families and into our homes until they could control it. Now they have the tech to control it. When I went to Afghanistan on a project, there was no internet porn. I remember searching it in Afghanistan. A big red warning came up on my computer, and it said, "This is illegal in this country. Stop searching for it. We know you looked." And okay. And so all the soldiers, would pass around flash drives or hard drives of porn. But the technology exists to take it off the internet, take it off the cell, if you choose to, as the American, to have it off. And so Americans love choice, Kyle. We deserve this choice, and we will get this choice. And we're just going to keep pushing until we accomplish that mission.
So we certainly get choice, and I do want to transition just a little bit because I've enjoyed talking about that. But we're sitting here. This will be coming out in a few weeks after we're having this discussion. But we're right in the middle of the presidential general election season. We've got one debate behind us. This actually happened yesterday. There's the campaigns running. You have the lawfare that Donald Trump's currently having to try to traverse through. The Democrats got what they wanted. They can call him a convicted felon, and they can call everyone that votes for him like, wait a minute, you're supporting a convicted felon. But I've asked several people about this, Ricky, and so I want to ask you as well. No matter how you slice it, no matter how the election turns out in November, no matter, who is in control of the House, the Senate, or the White House, I think the country's going to burn to a degree. I don't mean completely to the ground where we have to start over, but if it's Trump winning, it's Russia collusion, it's January 6th, we've been taken over by domestic terrorists, it's going to be that type of a thing. And then, of course, BLM and all the Marxist groups, Antifa and all that, they're just going to start doing what they were doing during George Floyd's summer.
No, they're not. Because you know why? Because we need a new policy. And the new policy is if you light fires, if you're an arsonist, you die. So the government and the folks here in the local governments are going to have to be serious, because when they light the fires, it's a different kind of spiritual attack. It becomes a different thing. People can protest all they want and peacefully, but what the people that light the fires, there needs to be a policy. You light fires and you risk other people's lives, you're shot on sight. And I think if they have that policy, we won't see our cities burn. But it's going to take radical strength to prevent them from acting like they did during the summer of George Floyd.
Right. I think that certainly if law enforcement and local municipalities actually took the law seriously and their community seriously, they wouldn't allow for those things to happen. I'm not exactly optimistic that they will do that this time around, certainly. But then, you have, if Joe Biden wins, I remember, Ricky, I was in downtown Austin the week of the 2020 election, and they were boarding up all the businesses, and all the liberals down there are like, I wonder why they're doing this. I'm like, they're not doing it in case Biden wins. They're doing it in case Trump wins. But there's been so much anger that's been ginned up by MAGA supporters, Republicans, people that just love Trump, or people that just love America, so that if Biden wins, even though he's, 3/4 of a vegetable at this point, that there might be people where, like January 6th, again, I think has been completely overblown. It was ridiculous in a lot of ways, but I think it's been certainly overblown. But I think there's going to be stuff like that that's going to be happening by fed up Republicans and fed up conservatives that are like, we've literally got to do something to take our country back. And either way, I don't like what I'm feeling and what I'm sensing. What's your read on what we're going to see in November?
Well, I don't think we're going to be burning our side. We don't burn stuff down. We like to build stuff. So I don't think that's our concern. But I see an enormous struggle ahead for our nation, enormous struggle. And that's, a lot's driven by economics and the Fed we talked about earlier in Jekyll Island, and how much debt we're incurring, and, so many years of Soviet and Chinese programming put into our minds. There's going to be a day of reckoning. There's going to be a period of reckoning, a time of reckoning. We lived decadently for so long. We ignored the Lord for so long. We ignored our budget for so long. We ignored our elders. We ignored the children for so long. The Lord's wrath with us. He's got to be. I mean, look how we have let so many things slide into disrepair, our souls, our country. So there's definitely, we don't come out of this without some scar tissue. There's no way we're going to come out of this without scar tissue. But we'll get through it. I think more likely, the struggle now is about who's going to kind of rebuild this great nation, who's going to have the power and the authority, and who's going to win that in the rebuilding of it. And we're fighting for the hearts and minds of the American people, right now, because they're watching. They're watching and they're waking up. And so, we'll be okay. I'm worried about the BRICS, the Brazil and Russia and India and China, the currency, and they're going to start trading oil in the Saudis are going to start trading oil and stuff other than the American dollar.
Right.
I mean, these are big concerns that we can't really influence much. But I am worried about they're spending us into oblivion, right? I mean, it's 35 trillion in debt. We're going trillions in debt every year now. It's unsustainable.
Sure. And
so there's going to be belt tightening for this nation and for everybody, for every home, is the way it seems to me. And that, we're so used to having everything in America and we're so spoiled and we've had so much. When people start to have less, it's going to be harder on many of them. And, I just hope that they mind their manners and don't try to take from their neighbors. I hope their neighbors are generous with them. And we all pull together as Americans to get through this. Because we are all are victims of a corrupt leadership, immoral leadership. And so we need to pull together, and make it right, make it better. But we got to be strong, as Christians. We got to stand up for the truth, not be afraid. We got to be loving as Christians, but not so loving to the point where we sacrifice Jesus' truth and the Bible's truth. But yeah, there's hard times coming, I believe. But we can get through it. We're going to have to get through it. We got no choice but to pull together and get through it. But I'm not sure necessarily the system that created this nightmare is the system that can fix it. There may be sort of, I saw a post the other day that I thought was good. It said, anybody try unplugging America and then plugging it back in? Sometimes you just need a reset. And that could be coming.
Well, and the good thing about what we know as Christians is that we know that God doesn't need America to accomplish what God wants to accomplish. And we know that, if you look back on at any point, even in antiquity, the Romans, the Greeks, the Assyrians, like these groups in their dominant hegemonic control of the world never lasts. And America is the same. So when we start to tighten our belt, most of the world will have to tighten their belt until a new dominant hegemon comes online. So we've talked about a lot of heavy and a lot of very, very important things. And so this is going to seem like a little bit of an awkward transition. But as we work our way towards the end here, I've got some more maybe fun questions to ask you here, kind of getting back into the acting world. So you mentioned early in the interview that you were a part of Lonesome Dove. So a lot of people see Lonesome Dove as one of the best Western pieces of film that have ever been created. So it's not a movie, it's a mini series, so it's a little bit different. But I want to know from you, if you had to take all the Westerns that have ever been created and you got to delete all of them except for one. So in your opinion, the best Western of all time would be what?
Lonesome Dove.
Well, I knew you were going to say Lonesome Dove. So now you got to give me number two. So two of them get to survive for the rest of eternity. You got Lonesome Dove. And what else, Ricky?
I love Unforgiven. Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman. I love that one. The Unforgiven.
It's a fantastic one. I got to say, for me, it's kind of hard for me to say anything other than Tombstone just because of the performances that were in there. But then also a modern one that doesn't get nearly enough play is Hostels with Christian Bale. It is a brutal movie. The opening scene, it's kind of like if you can't deal with this, do not pass go type of a scene, but it is very, very, very rough. And then the last question, we'll just make this the last question of the day because I'm curious about this because I've always wondered this and I've had no one to ask that's ever done it. And so I get to ask you, there's seemingly a big difference between acting and directing, probably because they are different jobs. And then I've always thought about, well, what about people that have done both or are doing both on the same project? So I thought of Mel Gibson with Braveheart. He was the dominant lead in an epic 3-hour-long film, but he was also directing it at the same time. It's like, how can you pull off something like that? Because you have different directors that'll sneak into their movies. M. Night Shyamalan might sneak into a scene or two, or, I just forgot the guy that did Pulp Fiction and Inglourious Bastards. His name's not coming to mind. Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like he'll sneak in a scene or two into a movie. But when you're the person in the movie and you're directing, like how does that work? And then for you, what's it like to kind of shift into different places where I'm the actor that's on the mark versus I'm the one making sure everyone is on their mark?
Yeah, I think, if the role is Mel Gibson was so great in Braveheart, and that role was kind of fit him easily, and I think he could slip in and out of it really easy. So I think that, a great team around him probably of support, so he could accomplish both tasks. But if it was a real stretch of a role, I doubt that the director would want to be the lead if it was some other kind of role. But I want to just mention about Tombstone. It's a great movie, and I go to Doc's grave sometimes. I live in Colorado, and we hike up to Doc Holliday's grave, and I'll drop something behind for him. It's one of my favorite hikes. If you ever get to Glenwood Springs, you should go to his grave.
Absolutely, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, Tombstone is a great Western, so it's definitely probably my top third.
Okay, well, Ricky, I just got to tell you, I am mega distracted now because all I can think about is going downstairs and putting Tombstone on. It's kind of one of those things. I got a few movies that if I'm flipping around the television, which doesn't happen often, but this movie comes on, I got to stop what I'm doing. Tombstone's one of those. The Sandlot is one of those for whatever reason. Yeah, it just locks me into where it's like, it doesn't matter if there's 15 minutes left in the film and I know how it ends. It's like, I got to see where it goes. But Ricky, we've gone everywhere in this conversation. I've really enjoyed the detail that you've given to this conversation, and we obviously share a lot of the same concerns. But for me, that's all I got. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest?
I just wanted to say, I don't have all the answers, Kyle, about my past, and I'm still searching. It's kind of like it's like it being in a mystery with very few clues. And I leave room for the possibility that I have a great imagination, and that's a possibility. So just know that.
Well, very, very good, Ricky. I'm so glad that we've connected, and we'll connect more offline. And as you get that documentary on board, we'd love to have you back on to chat about that. So we'll talk to you certainly down the road.
All right, bye.
There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed my time with Ricky. But before we let you go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. The only link I've got for you today is a link to Ricky's Facebook page. Go and follow him there. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.